They're a moment in life when your body begins to whisper before it ever raises its voice. Subtle shifts that are easy to ignore until they're not. A sudden wave of tiredness that lingers longer than it should. A change in appetite that you can't explain. Or that quiet heaviness in your chest that makes breathing feel just a little more difficult than yesterday. These changes don't shout. They don't announce themselves with sirens. Instead, they arrive quietly, like distant thunder before a coming storm. Most of us, especially as we grow older, are used to aches, fatigue, and occasional off day. It becomes second nature to say, "I'm just getting older," or "I'll feel better tomorrow." And sometimes that's true, but other times the body is trying to say something far more important, something we often don't want to hear. According to doctors and caregivers who work with seniors every single day, especially those in hospice and end-of-life care, there are 5 clear signs a body gives when it's nearing the end. These aren't guesses. They aren't vague feelings. They are real, physical, observable changes. Changes that, when recognized, can help prepare us, not just medically, but emotionally and spiritually, for one of the most profound transitions in human life, the heartbreaking reality. Most people miss these signs, not because they're hidden and not because they're hard to see, but because we aren't emotionally prepared to recognize them. We don't want to admit that someone we love may be nearing the end. Sometimes, we don't even want to admit it to ourselves. But this video isn't meant to frighten you. It's not about doom or despair. This is about awareness, about dignity, and more than anything else, it's about giving you and your loved ones a gift of time. Time to notice what matters, time to talk, time to plan, and time to say the word we often leave unsaid until it's too late. Because when you know what to look for, you don't just watch someone fade. You walk beside them with presence and purpose. You respond with compassion instead of confusion. You offer peace instead of panic. So today, we're going to gently walk through these 5 warning signs together. No panic, no pressure, just understanding, just truth, just heart. So when that moment eventually arrives, whether it's to someone you love or one day even for you, you won't be afraid. You'll be ready, and you won't face it alone. Writing hand sign number 1. One of the first and often most overlooked signs that death may be drawing near is a quiet withdrawal from daily life. A loved one who used to eagerly answer your calls might suddenly stop picking up the phone. They may begin turning down invitations to family dinners or lose interest in their favorite TV shows, hobbies, or even simple conversations. You'll notice they sleep more during the day, and when they're awake, they say little, sometimes nothing at all. At first glance, it might seem like they're just tired or going through a low phase. But doctors who specialize in hospice and palliative care say this behavior is often a clear signal. The person is preparing, consciously or unconsciously, for their final transition. This isn't depression in the traditional sense. It's something deeper. It's not about sadness or giving up. It's a natural, internal process. The body starts conserving energy for the most essential functions. The brain, in turn, slowly detaches from the outside world and turns inward. It's a quiet, protective instinct, almost like the soul gently beginning to step back from the noise of life. What should you look out for? There are a few key signs. You might see them refusing food or skipping meals. They may avoid engaging in conversation, even with people they love deeply. Long naps become frequent, and visits from friends or grandchildren that once brought joy might now feel overwhelming or unwanted. They may even politely ask to be left alone. It's important not to take this personally. Their silence doesn't mean they've stopped loving you. In fact, it's often quite the opposite. They're simply conserving what little energy they have left. Their world is becoming quieter, smaller. Their focus has shifted inward. If someone close to you starts pulling away from life, day by day, moment by moment, it may be their way of saying goodbye, not with words, but through their presence or absence. And while it may be difficult to witness, understanding this sign can help you meet them with compassion, rather than confusion or fear. Writing hand sign number 2, changes in breathing. One of the most noticeable and often most unsettling signs that the end of life may be approaching is a sudden change in the way a person breathes. You may begin to hear the breath grow shallow, labored, or irregular. Sometimes it speeds up. Other times, it slows down so much that you wonder if it stopped altogether. Then, just as suddenly, it starts again. This pattern is known in medical terms as Cheyne-Stokes respiration, and doctors say it's one of the clearest physical indicators that the body is beginning to shut down. At its core, this change occurs because the brain is no longer fully controlling the breathing process. As oxygen levels fluctuate and carbon dioxide builds up, the body struggles to maintain its normal rhythm. The result? You may hear long pauses, sometimes 10 to 30 seconds, between breaths. You might notice a sharp gasp, followed by silence. The breathing may sound wet or raspy, and the chest might rise and fall in a strange or uneven pattern. For families and loved ones witnessing this, the experience can be frightening. It's natural to feel panic or a sense of urgency, but doctors and hospice nurses are quick to reassure that this type of breathing is rarely painful. In fact, many patients are completely unaware of the changes. They are not gasping for air in distress. They are simply transitioning, their bodies following a natural end-of-life process. What should you be watching for specifically? Sudden gasping sounds, long pauses between breaths, shallow chest movement, or a rattling noise sometimes called a death rattle. This sound happens when saliva and fluids collect in the throat because the person is too weak to swallow. It can be difficult to hear, but again, it's more disturbing for observers than it is for the person themselves. These breathing changes often happen in the final days or even hours of life. When you notice them, it may mean that time is running short. In these moments, the most powerful thing you can offer is presence. Sit close, hold their hand, breathe with them. Because when the rhythm of life begins to fade, what matters most is not panic, but peace. Writing hand, sign number 3. Sudden surge of energy. One of the most surprising and emotionally confusing moments near the end of life is when a person who has been unresponsive or deeply fatigued suddenly becomes alert again. After days of barely eating, barely speaking, and lying silently in bed, they may sit up, they might ask for food, they might even smile, hold a conversation, or tell a joke. To the family watching, it feels like a miracle, like the person is getting better. But doctors and hospice nurses call this phenomenon the final rally. It's a well-documented event that occurs in many patients just before death. It may last a few hours, in rare cases, a full day. But sadly, this sudden burst of energy is not a sign of recovery. It's often a sign that the body is preparing for its final goodbye. Why does this happen? Medically speaking, it's thought to be due to a temporary shift in brain chemistry. The body releases a small reserve of endorphins and adrenaline, chemicals that can increase alertness and temporarily reduce pain. There's also a deep emotional component. The brain, in its final moment of clarity, maybe try and give the person one last opportunity to reconnect with the people and moments that mattered most. You may notice them asking for a full meal after days of refusing food. They may speak with unusual clarity, share memories, or express deep emotional thoughts that they hadn't voiced before. They might ask to see certain loved ones or say things that sound like farewells. Statements like, "I'm ready now," or "Thank you for everything." To those watching, this moment is filled with hope, and that's completely understandable. But it's important to know this is not a recovery. It's a gift, a small, powerful window to say what needs to be said, to hold their hand, to tell them you love them, to allow them and yourself to find peace. The final rally is one of the body's most mysterious and profound acts. It can feel like a return to life, but in truth, it's a gentle stepping stone toward the end. And when it happens, your presence matters more than anything. Be there, be still, be loving. Writing hand, sign number 4, cold hands and feet. As the body nears the final stages of life, it begins to make quiet, physical adjustments, subtle but powerful. One of the clearest signs is a noticeable drop in warmth in the hands and feet. This change is not just due to room temperature or a chilly environment. It's a sign that the body is reallocating its resources. In medical terms, this is known as peripheral cyanosis, a condition where blood circulation is focused toward the body's vital organs, such as the heart, lungs, and brain, leaving the extremities, like fingers, toes, and limbs, cool and pale. You may touch a loved one's hand and notice it feels unusually cold, even with a warm blanket covering it. Their skin might appear bluish, purplish, or mottled, especially on the fingertips, toes, or legs. This is because the blood is no longer flowing freely to the skin surface. Even gentle massage or warmth may not bring color or temperature back. It's the body's natural way of preserving energy and protecting what matters most as it begins to slow down. This sign typically appears in the last days or weeks of life, though in some cases, it may begin earlier, especially in those who are bedridden or severely ill. It can be startling for family members, particularly when the change happens suddenly. But doctors and palliative care nurses often explain that cold extremities do not mean the person is in pain or discomfort. In fact, most people experiencing this are unaware of the temperature change entirely. What matters most in these moments isn't warming the hands or feet. It's being emotionally present. Sit with them. Hold their hand, even if it's cold. Speak softly. Your warmth, the warmth of your voice, your presence, your love, means far more than any blanket ever could. When you see this change, recognize it for what it is, a sign that the body is letting go one step at a time. It's not a moment for panic, but for tenderness. The cold in their hands may be real, but your connection, your presence, your love, that remains the warmest comfort of all. Writing hand, sign number 5, spiritual visions or conversations. As life nears its final moments, something truly extraordinary often begins to unfold. Something that science struggles to fully explain, but families around the world continue to witness. A loved one who seemed barely aware of their surroundings may suddenly begin speaking softly, not to anyone in the room, but to someone unseen. You might hear them call out the name of a long-departed spouse, a parent they lost decades ago, or even a child they buried in sorrow. They may smile, reach out their hand, or whisper things like, "They're here," or "I have to go now." Doctors and hospice workers have observed this phenomenon countless times, and while it may sound mystical, it's far more common than most people realize. Known as spiritual visions or end-of-life dreams, these moments tend to happen in the final days, or sometimes even hours of life. And remarkably, across cultures, religions, and backgrounds, the stories are strikingly similar. These visions are not hallucinations. They are not the result of medication or confusion. In fact, they are often described as deeply peaceful, comforting, and emotionally healing. The person may see loved ones who passed, or describe a warm presence, a bright light, or a sense that someone is waiting to guide them. They may smile or cry softly, not out of fear, but out of recognition and calm. Medical science doesn't fully understand this. There's no measurable data that explains why so many people in different parts of the world describe nearly identical experiences near death. But those who work in hospice care will tell you these moments are very real to the person experiencing them, and they're often just as real to the families witnessing them. What should you watch for? Conversations with people you can't see, descriptions of light, warmth, or feeling that home is near, a sudden peace after days of restlessness, or statements like, "I have to go, they're waiting for me," or even, "Don't be afraid." For families, witnessing this can be a turning point. Fear begins to melt. The unknown becomes less frightening. And in that sacred space, what once felt like loss begins to feel like transition. Whether you believe in the afterlife or not, there's a gentle beauty in these final conversations. They remind us that sometimes the journey out of this world may be met with familiar faces, welcoming us home. Clapperboard final thoughts. These 5 signs don't mean that death will arrive tomorrow or even next week, but they do whisper that the body is changing, that something sacred and irreversible may be beginning. These signs are not warnings to fear, but invitations to listen more closely, to be more present, and to gently shift the way we love and care in those final days. Doctors and caregivers who walk beside the dying every day don't share this knowledge to cause panic. They share it to give you something far more valuable. Time. Time to open conversations we often delay. Time to tell someone, "You matter." Time to sit silently beside them without needing to fix anything. Just being there fully, because when we recognize these signs early enough, we're given a rare gift. We can hold a hand tighter, We can say what was left unsaid. We can offer peace instead of panic, acceptance instead of fear. So, if someone you love begins to show these signs, pause, be still, let them lead the pace. Whether they speak or stay silent, whether they rally or rest, just let them know, I see you, I'm here, you're not alone. And when death does come, if it comes with awareness, with love, and with dignity, it doesn't have to feel like darkness. It can feel like a door gently closing and a soul quietly finding its way home.